Have you ever wondered what happens with all the waste we generate? Do you ever think about what you throw away or how much you throw away? What do you think happens with all the hazardous waste we have generated over the past few years? These are the questions we will talk about in this episode. So today we will talk with an expert in the field of waste management, Arjan van Daal. Arjan is head of the waste management department of the Municipality The Hague, and he will demystify what actually happens to our waste and provide us with valuable advice on how to handle our waste responsibly. So welcome, Arjan, to our studio.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, very glad to have you. So, as I said in the introduction, you are head of a waste department. Could you tell us a bit more about that and about yourself? Like, what does your workday look like?
Of course. I've been department manager now for 2.5 years. And I have a team with about 20 team members. And those are people from all ages, from very young to 60 plus. Male, female is about 50-50. Some of them are very experienced, have been around for many years, and others just entered the last 2 or 3 years. So it's quite a mixed group, and I actually like that very much. So a significant part of my job is being a human resource manager, and the other part of my job is related to, let's say, all kinds of policy matters concerning waste management. My agenda weekly is quite different, but if I look back at the last week, there have been quite a lot of different appointments. I had a monthly meeting with the director of the waste collection company. In The Hague, we have a company called HMS, and it collects the household waste in The Hague. And it's owned by the municipality, so each month I discuss with this director how the operation is working and what future decisions have to be prepared. I have a weekly staff with the deputy mayor for waste management, and then we discuss all kinds of advices which have been produced by my team members. I had a discussion with my director about a dispute we have with a group of inhabitants about the waste infrastructure in their street. They were opposed to the way we decided to put this infrastructure in their street, and actually they decided to went to court, so we had to defend ourselves. So I prepared with my director what we were going to say to the judge. I'm also the chairman of a monthly meeting with all the colleagues of other departments who are involved in keeping the public space in our city clean. And our department spends about 60 million euros a year, so there are many bills. So a part of my job is also the approval of many bills in a workflow system. And at last, as you've probably seen outside on the streets, there are more and more people having deliveries at home. So we have a lot of problems with carton boxes. People drop them on the streets, or containers fill up very quickly. So we're now discussing what can we do about it. We still don't have a solution, so if one of the students have solutions, please call me.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot going on. And in this particular episode, we will talk about the smelly business of waste, of course. So maybe let's start at the very beginning. What actually happens with our waste after we dispose of it in the garbage bin?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because several things happen after you dispose your waste. First of all, I have to say that you have to make a distinction between household waste or domestic waste on one hand and commercial waste on the other hand. Municipalities like The Hague are solely responsible for domestic waste and not for commercial waste. So actually I don't specifically know what happens to the commercial waste. We are focusing on the household waste, which is more than 200 million kilograms a year in our city. The Municipality of The Hague, as I said before, has a public company for collecting waste. It's called HMS, and they collect the waste in several forms. Some of the houses in our city have their own waste containers in several colors, whereas in other areas with more high-rise buildings, there are collective containers in the streets. And then we also have 3 waste management stations where people can actually bring their own waste. So by using all these different means of collecting waste, the waste is transported to one location in the city. It's called the Binkhorst, an industrial area in The Hague. And there it is redistributed to several commercial companies who actually are responsible for processing the waste. For instance, the bioorganic waste is handed over to a company that makes compost out of the bioorganic waste. The plastic and the cans is handed to another company, and they recycle the bottles and the other plastics and the cans. Although separated waste streams is about 40% of our domestic waste and is being used in one way or another in some sustainable way. But then we still have 60% residual waste. And this residual waste is transported to Port of Rotterdam, where is a huge factory with ovens. And in these ovens, this residual waste is actually being burned. And the heat of the burning is used to produce electricity.
Wow, so there is actually a whole world attached to our waste that most of us are, well, very unaware of, I guess.
True.
So to dive a bit deeper in this subject, because in this podcast we are specifically interested in sustainability, of course, what are the current sustainability issues within waste management?
Well, there are actually quite a few sustainability issues, and I'll mention 5 of them. The first one is that some inhabitants, they don't use the waste infrastructure in a proper way. And one of the effects is that our public space gets filthy. And it also means that plastics can be blown into the water. And, well, as probably many of us know, there's a huge plastic soup in our seas and oceans. This is one of the sustainability issues. A second one is that we lose a lot of materials and other resources which aren't actually endless. So you could say we're actually consuming our Earth in a very rapid speed. Mm-hmm. And we think we have to transform into a circular economy. And many countries and many cities in the world have an agenda for transforming into a circular economy, but it will take several decades to have significantly less waste being spoiled in this way. Third issue is that some of our household waste is actually hazardous waste because there are some toxic elements in the waste. And medicine waste is actually one of the examples of hazardous waste. And, well, you can imagine this is quite a threat for public health. Then a fourth issue, well, it's actually not about sustainability, but is related to it. Processing waste is quite costly, and the costs of processing waste are getting higher and higher each year. For instance, this year we had to raise the waste tax in The Hague with 20% due to the higher fees the private processing companies actually make us pay for processing. And the more we have to pay, the less we can actually invest in really sustainable measures. And a fifth matter is that whereas many of our inhabitants are quite aware of the need of waste separations, there's still a large number of inhabitants who unfortunately are not that aware. And if they, for instance, don't separate bioorganic waste in a proper way, it gets contaminated. And when this kind of waste gets contaminated, you're not allowed to compost it anymore. Well, this is the case with bioorganic waste, but actually for many waste streams, this problem of contamination causes that if you don't separate the waste, you can't reuse it in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I imagine that goes also for hazardous waste, because if it's getting contaminated with the normal waste, then it might also be a health threat for the waste workers in a way. Yeah, I think this is a reason why separating waste at the household level is important. But are there other reasons, and what makes this difficult for people to do?
I think there are mainly 2 reasons for people why it is difficult to do. One has to do with behavior and consciousness. I think that many people are quite conscious why it is important to separate their waste. But there's a difference between being conscious and actually do it on a daily basis. I can admit that even I sometimes don't separate my waste in the way you should, because, well, you really have to think about it. But there are also people who actually, well, it's to say it bluntly, who don't care, who don't mind. It's not a top priority in their lives. They have other issues to deal with, and well, they have just one bin and they put all their garbage in there, and they don't really care about the impact it has. And there's another reason which is quite specific for urban areas. In urban areas, houses are relatively small and public space is also relatively scarce. And this makes that both inside and outside houses, there's not much space for having 3, 4, 5, 6 bins or containers for separating your waste. Or many people in our city don't own a car, so you don't take, let's say, a mattress to the waste station that easily. And well, you can't take a mattress of other furniture which is broken. You can't take it in public transportation to the waste station. So that's another more practical reason why waste separation in cities like The Hague is at a relatively low level.
Yeah. So as I understand, the municipality actually has its hands full with processing our waste. How can we as citizens contribute to better waste management?
Well, it all starts with awareness and changing your behavior. What we are now doing to make it more easily for people to separate their waste, and they don't have the facilities in their house or in their street. Each quarter in The Hague, we have 45 quarters. Each quarter will have what we call in Dutch an afvalsorteerstraatje. In English, that would be something like a waste sorting street, which should be less than 1 kilometer from your house, where you can actually bring about 6 different waste streams. And we put a lot of attention to this new waste sorting streets. So we hope that more people will in this way be motivated to separate their waste. Another possibility is that citizens can adopt a waste container. And you might be surprised that now more than 900 inhabitants of our city have decided to adopt a waste container. They don't give it a name, but what they actually do, they have a key. So if it's blocked, they can fix it. If it's full or if it gets very filthy, they can call a telephone number of one of the municipal colleagues. And if they see that other people throw their garbage outside of the container instead of inside, they can also talk with their co-citizen and say you shouldn't be doing this way.
Sort of creating more ownership.
Exactly. And sometimes it takes some courage, but because not everybody responds in a very friendly way if you address issues like that. And of course, at home you can also do a lot of things. You can have a very small bioorganic waste bin. It doesn't take that much space. And you can also try to be more aware about what you put in what kind of bin. And I think at last, what is important, I bike and walk a lot in the city, as the students will probably also do. And what you often see is there is, for instance, furniture outside which still is in a quite good condition.
Yeah.
And people just throw it away. And now during the corona crisis, it's difficult, but we have this kringloopwinkels, circular shops, where you can actually bring goods, consumer goods, which are actually still reusable for second-hand use. And it would be good if people would, much more than they do now, bring goods which are still reusable. And an example which can be compared with it is that instead of owning your own consumer goods and throw it away when it's not usable any longer, you can also rent goods. You've probably seen all those scooters in our city. That's just one of the means. Instead of owning a scooter, you can just use it when you need one, and it prevents that you in 5 or 10 years just throw it away when you don't want to use it any longer.
Yeah, so that's a move towards that more circular economy where you were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, we all have a share in improving this system, right?
Yes, we do. The municipality has a share. Companies and non-commercial organizations have a share, and individual citizens also have a share.
Yeah. So we've talked about the challenges that exist in this field, in this system, but are there also things that, I don't know, give you hope, that are promising developments or initiatives or things you personally want to know more of?
Mm-hmm. I think which gives me actually hope is that there are both small-scale and large-scale innovations which help us to get the waste management system more sustainable. And they're both important, the small ones and the big ones. And as an example of small initiatives, there are in more and more neighborhoods in The Hague inhabitants who stand up and start to create their own compost with bioorganic waste and also use it within their own area to produce their own vegetables and fruit and flowers, etc. And you see more and more, it's just like, well, I wouldn't compare it with a virus, but you see more and more people
viral change
being,
in a way.
yeah, a sort of viral change. People being
sparked with inspiration
when they see it happening in another neighborhood or where people in their own neighborhood, and then they join the initiative. And we have more and more those kinds of small initiatives, and we try to support as a municipality these kinds of initiatives. And we also have a deputy mayor who thinks those small initiatives are very important, and then she, for instance, by visiting them or mentioning them on her Twitter account, she puts, let's say, the spotlight on those initiatives. And then there are the larger innovations, and one innovation which is actually quite promising is that waste separation is now, let's say, done by individual people, but there is also the possibility to do it in an automatic way. There's now a factory in the port of Rotterdam in which plastics can be separated automatically from other garbage, and it helps you to raise the percentage of separation significantly. And the city of The Hague decided 2 years ago to make use of this factory. So actually we now have two ways of separation. Separation at home by inhabitants themselves, and separation in this factory. And there are more initiatives for these kinds of facilities to separate waste at a large scale.
Yeah, it's really nice and interesting to hear that indeed also those small steps count, right?
True.
I'm just curious, like, what are the things you personally want to learn more of, like in this field? Are there things you still don't know or are interested in personally?
Yes, there's one thing I really can't grasp why it happens, and it has to do with trying to keep neighborhoods clean. And we have had all kinds of interventions with the help of behavioral scientists. Mm-hmm. What can we do by communication, participation, also law enforcement, to promote people to offer their waste in the way it should be done and to separate it. And if you have all these measures, then what you see happen in a specific neighborhood is that the results are getting much better. Mm-hmm. But once you get the attention to a normal level, within a few months it gets back to a level which was the situation prior to the experiment. And what wonders me is people moving in and out, of course, can be a part of the explanation, but I really don't understand what makes people decide to follow new behavior because they are promoted to do so, and once the extra measures are gone, it stops. It's a mystery to me.
Yeah. So the question about not only maybe behavior change, but also sort of a culture change, that it sticks.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is interesting. So that's still an open question in a way.
It is. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's nice to end this episode with this question to think further about. I have one last question for you, Arjan, mm-hmm. to come back to the main theme of these podcast series of innovation. What has been your own latest innovation in your daily life? Just can be something small, but...
Well, it's actually a sort of a reinvention, and it's by far not sophisticated, but much more than in the past. I walk, whereas previously I used public transportation or my own bike or the car a lot of times. Nowadays I do many things by walking, and not just walking for leisure or to have a break during a working day, and that's the real innovation for me, and it's also an eye-opener. Having a meeting using your smartphone and a headset by walking in the park. It really surprises me that this is quite energetic, much more energetic when you're sitting on a chair as you do it in the usual way. So even when the corona crisis is over and the necessity to be stick to home is over, I will continue to use this kind of having a meeting with someone else.
Yeah, I love that answer because it really shows that innovation doesn't have to be like enormous or big, but it can be very small and therefore will stick with you for a longer time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Arjan, for joining us today. I really enjoyed our talk. Well, I definitely gained more insight in how our waste management system actually works in the first place. And well, I try to think twice before I throw something away now.
Okay.
And well, I'm sure our listeners got inspired too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome and hope to see you soon.
Thanks.